He will now, nobody better than him to give us some insights on how educational data can be used to support policymaking. Therefore, without further ado, Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniele, and thank you, Roberto, Patrizia, for this invitation. It's a very interesting conference. And we're actually moving from a data producer to a data user. The idea of this talk is basically to try to show you how can educational data be used in order, as Daniel was saying, to shape policymaker by researchers outside of the academic world. So there is a difference between academic research and non-academic research, and I'm going to talk about this second strand, basically. That's what we do at the Fondazione Agnelli. Before I get into it and provide some examples of the sort of things we do, let me just say a few words on who we are. Fondazione Agnelli has been around for more than 50 years now, but since a long time has been focusing on education research. What we do is basically try to look at what we see as potential shortcomings of the Italian school system and university system, and try to look for possible solutions. And then that's the research part. Then there is the advocacy part, which is trying to convince policymakers to step in and change things that we regard as not working. In order to do so, by the way, this is a building of the Agnelli Foundation in Torino, for those of you who haven't been with us. Just to give you a few examples, I'll use a few more later on. Probably the thing we are best known for is Eduscopio. Eduscopio is a website which comes out every year in order to help households to choose the upper secondary school according, based on local and by track information. So the choice is constrained locally and by track. And then this data, in the English British word would be sort of league tables. They are ranked, schools are ranked according basically to two criteria. One is how do they prepare for the university studies by looking at the marks on the first year of college of all the graduates from any one school. And secondly, marks and credits obtained in the first year. And for technical and professional, instead we look at the labor market indicators such as probability of finding permanent jobs and so on. But Eduscopio is just one of the things we do. We just come out, for instance, with a report on the one of the almost yearly report we make, a report on the state of the school buildings in Italy, which we regard as being a very important and partly neglected topic so far. Clearly we do, as you can see, other kind of studies like direct observation on teaching practices within schools. That's something we've been working with INVALSI, and also we do impact assessment on government or private policy. For instance, we've been assessing policy against school dropouts by Save the Children, the no-profit organization most of you are familiar with, and within the educational poverty program. So that's basically just a few things we do. The first question when you talk about the use of educational data and research in order to shape or to influence policy making, the first question you have to ask yourself is basically, who am I talking to? And based on our experience, there are three main stakeholders, three main group of people we talk to. One is very obvious, the policymakers, which at the end of the day have to make a decision, draft laws, and policymakers can be the ministry, but at the same time can be local authorities. We've been working a lot with regional governments and municipalities. Secondly, you want to try to talk to schools, meaning principal and teacher mostly. And thirdly, and equally importantly, there is just talk a bit about this talking to the public opinion and media and in general household at large. So public opinion at large. Now this is very important because what we learn is it's almost impossible basically to implement a policy if some way you don't get on board all three constituencies. Policymakers won't implement anything if they don't feel they have enough support both from schools and from public opinion at large. So you basically have to try to make an effort to talk to all three stakeholders at the same time. And the consequence of that, which is one of the points I would like you to come away with, is basically, in order to talk to each constituency, to each stakeholder, you probably have to tailor-make your own research. You can't use the same, you can use the same data, but you can't use the same research result for different stakeholders. One example, for instance, is Eduscopio, which it's been a quite controversial effort we made. Now, obviously, researchers typically don't like Eduscopio, even within INVALSI, we know. Schools like or don't like Eduscopio depending on their position on the ranking. But initially, certainly they didn't like it very much. Still, Eduscopio is still there. Why is it still there? The reason we explicitly try to aim at family. Eduscopio is not trying to assess value added, it's not trying to establish cause-effect links, so causal relationship. It's just providing information which is families find it useful in order to choose their high school or upper secondary school for their children. So it was since the very beginning, it was a tool, an instrument. It was clearly thought of in order to speak directly to families. So nothing wasn't made in order to speak to policymakers or to school itself, although there are information schools that find interesting to look at. But it was clearly done for public opinion. In that sense, I tend to regard it as successful because families found it useful, and that, in a sense, had, even at the end of the day, schools and policymakers to accept their existence of controversial tools such as Eduscopio. For instance, evaluation, which is another very controversial topic in this country. We wrote a report, and we totally support the work of INVALSI in this field since the very beginning. Still, I tend to think one of the issues why evaluation hasn't been so easily accepted by Italian schools is basically probably government, ministry, and possibly also INVALSI should make more of an effort to try to make this data useful to schools in the first place, but especially to families. You know, once you get to make it looked at by, and very important for families, it will be difficult for, you know, to basically try to boycott it, you know, as happened in the past, such an instrument as standardized testing. So it's a complicated game, realize, but the first thing is you have to keep, you have different stakeholders you want to talk to. It's not just the ministry, it's not just the school, you have to also be able to talk to the school, to the public opinion. And in order to do that, you probably have to differentiate the sort of instrument and messages you want to get across. Secondly, which kind of data sources do we normally use? Clearly, if you, I've been an academic for part of my life, academic researchers tend to use one data set, one database, because they're mostly very interested in a methodological issue to make improvement in methodological issue. The second thing I would like to go away with is once you deal with, and I'll give some example, deal with policy issues, it's very difficult to get a satisfactory answer by simply looking at one source of data. You know, you have to try to have a more comprehensive view of the issue, which means very often relying on different, very diverse data sources in order to deal with the issue. Normally, what we deal with, as you can see, we look at secondary data, which very often administrative data, school balance sheet, these are labor market indicators. As I mentioned, for the scope, we look, for instance, data on university achievement. We use a lot the national and international assessment. Jerry just talked about. We also collect primary data, and I'll give you some information. But you know, basically, you need to start from a policy issue, from a policy question, and then you look at the data. This is not the same very often with academic work. With academic work, you tend to look at the data because, again, you're very interested very often in making a methodological improvement. You look at the technique. In our case, the reverse is true. So you need to start from policy question and then look which data can help you to answer. And then you obviously need to transform raw data into evidence by using different methodologies, which can be, somebody brought up the issue of qualitative to sophisticated economic empirical analysis. One of the most interesting work we've been doing has been using ethnographic methodology like shadowing in order to see what a week in the life of a principal, of a head teacher's is like. So we ask the researcher to shadow basically the life of a number of principals in different schools in the country, and that was very useful because it helped us to sort of get into day-to-day life of a principal, which is something impossible to do when you look from the outside to administrative data or national large-scale assessment. So use a variety of give you a few examples which cut across different kind of data and in different topics in order to make my point. The first example is a study we recently did, which is basically the policy question there is it's very simple. I mean, what is going to be the school population in 10 years' time? Almost 2020, so we tend to do it every year, so we actually begin in 2018. That obviously it was we were working on school building, so obviously we were interested in seeing what the size of the population is going to be in order to see whether we have an excess of space, of room, extra room, or a lack of room in schools. The data are very interesting because basically what we came out with using the population projection by the National Statistical Office, basically the student population is going to become much smaller by over 1.1 million people within 10 years. So, I'm sure you're aware of the demographic change in Italy, but that's pretty impressive since we're going to lose over 1 million students out of 10 million if you include preschool, 9 million if you start from 6 years old. So it's a massive change, right? It's really big number. We also computed the number of basically fewer teachers would be needed according to this change, keeping obviously the ratio fixed, and we came up with a number which is impressive in itself again. So in 10 years' time we're going to lose 65,000 jobs within the school system. And also save in terms of public money is a bit over 2 million euro, which obviously made the treasury very happy, but for those of us who like the school, I'm not sure it's a good deal to get fewer resources. But if we don't do anything, clearly that's what's going to happen basically. Fewer students, fewer classes, fewer teachers. So, is anything we can say based on this data source? Basically, no. The population projection is all we can say. But still, there are questions at this stage, which is very interesting to look at. For instance, how can we, would be possible to use, given the trend in the student population improve and student achievement, how can we support foreign student integration? Most specifically, there are a number of things you can do basically when you have fewer students, which might improve in theory school achievement. For instance, send the hour school in the afternoon teaching, especially in lower secondary school and upper secondary school. We know that primary school, a large number of schools actually have full-time students. Change the teacher-student ratio, reduce the number of students per class, which is something France is doing currently in certain difficult areas. Increase the number of subjects you study. These are all very relevant policy questions, but questions you cannot answer by simply looking at demographic trends. What you need is on very many of these issues, there's been a large literature which tend to be not very conclusive very often, but the research has been done. So we really need to look at probably from an experimental point of view, try and test, is there a improvement in achievement if you reduce the, for instance, number of students per class, or change the teacher-student ratio. So these are very important policy questions. You cannot answer with the data we've been looking at so far. So you need to bring new data, and that's clearly something for hopefully some research will look at in the future. A second example, there are three examples, sorry, is an assessment we did, and Luciano Povi, who runs IPRAS, is here, in the province of Trento, and concern special needs students, BES, which is the Italian language, which is a topic which is, you know, tend to attract very little academic research, and I regard this being a pity because it's actually a very big issue in the school life. I mean, just to give you a number, we currently have 150,000 support teachers in the Italian schools, so it's almost going to be 20%, almost 20% of the teachers' population in school are support teachers. So it's a major effort the Italian school system has made in order to basically include special needs students. The Italian way, I'm sure most of you know that, is basically special needs students are totally included in the class, in the school life, depending on the kind of need they have. They receive help from a support teacher, insegnante di sostegno. We've been looking previously, you know, the system, on paper, the system is one of the most advanced in the world. It was actually, Italy was one of the countries at the forefront of dealing with special needs students, different, say, from Germany, where you still have, you know, special classes and special schools and so on. Try to integrate, include special needs students into normal classroom. So I tend to regard it as very positive thing, but it's quite obvious to ask oneself, does it work or does it not work? Now, the impression we came, we wrote a report, one of the report, we write on that, and was not everything was working fine, honestly. Very often what looked to us is special needs students are sort of confined within the classroom, but basically just to the support teacher. They're not fully integrated in daily life of their peers, of their mates. Okay, because very often, you know, the pressure for the normal teachers to carry on the daily duties, so basically special needs students, is hard to say, but seen as you know, sort of factor we may slow down the learning process of the peers, and so, you know, it's just it's a duty up to the support teacher. So can be done differently. We ask ourselves, in order to answer this question, and thanks to the support of the Trento province, we actually ran an experiment with a group of treated classes, 20, and equivalent group of control, other 20 classes within the province. Is everything fine? Ah, okay. Basically, the province, which, as most of you probably know, is actually in charge of the schooling system in the Trento province, the provincial government, organized a major training effort for the treated 23 classes. So they go through several attempts, and then was done with the help of experts in special education, Dario Yares, Fiorina, and so on, in order to provide every single teacher, so normal, say, teachers with the instrument in order to deal with special needs students. And we had a control. It was a big effort also financially, very big effort to train all the teachers. We collected the data, clearly. You can find the result in a working paper on both IPRASE website and Fondazione Agnelli website if you're interested. We look at a number of features and cognitive skills, student achievements, both for special needs students and non-special needs students, climate within the classroom, sociograms, which is a Moreno sociogram, in order to look at the degree of inclusion of special needs students. What were the final evidence? We had a very good impact in the treated group, so in the group where all teachers receive special training in order to work with special needs students. Very good impact on statistically significant impact on inclusion and school climate. We have a weak, statistically insignificant impact on non-cognitive skills for SNS, which means compare to the SNS in the classes who weren't treated, who hadn't been treated. And we had basically no impact on achievements of SNS and non-SNS students, which is a good news in itself, because as I said, I mean, the concern is typically, you know, non-SNS have been slowed down because teachers have to deal with special students. That wasn't the case. So overall, it's clearly, I tend to regard as a successful experiment which provided a number of interesting features. How does one move from there? Well, basically, there are again other questions would like to be answered. What happens in the medium long run? I mean, it was just a temporary effect or bound to vanish, you know, as time goes by, or did we achieve a permanent improvement, for instance, in the degree of inclusion of special students? Obviously, you know, how much would it cost if you were to sort of try to expand, to scale up the intervention even outside the very rich Trento province. I'm looking at Luciano, but so, you know, this sort of thing, again, what you probably need is to bring more evidence to bear on this issue. I mean, just one experiment can give you a clue, but it doesn't provide a policy answer. Finally, an example of what I mentioned at the beginning, try to look at an issue by bringing different sources of data. This is something, work in progress, we're doing. It's actually work we've done already and we are redoing, come out, will be published beginning of next year, 2020, so this is my first presentation of the work. We've been working a lot on lower secondary school, and we still, the policy question is Scuola Media, lower secondary school working fine in terms of efficacy and fairness, equity. Some of you may have seen it, already tried to answer about 8 years ago with a report on this. And we are now interested in looking at things that have changed since our first report. So we come up with a second report. Now, in order to try to answer, we're using a number of different data sources, and I'll give you a few examples of what we do. First of all, we try to gather evidence on the well-being of students. And what we found out, this is something not strictly speaking educational data. HBSC is by the World Health Organization. It's a survey done 11 years old and 14 years old, so it's basically the time for the Italian lower secondary school. And the purpose is medical, like well-being of students. Do they have healthy, good style? Do they smoke? Do they problem family? Very interesting. But there are questions which may be relevant for the for education, like how do you feel like being in school? How do you like school? What do you think school? And that's the first interesting answer we get is basically that pre-adolescent a very difficult time to be for those of you who either teach or have children of that age. Is you will know it's a terrible time, but that's a terrible time everywhere, not just in Italy. So the interesting thing is you see, well-being indicators tend to decline from 11 to 13 years old. But the interesting thing in Italy, the feeling of well-being of students is among the lowest in the country. Sorry, these are boys and these are girls. They didn't show again. And you see, boys are even more untractable than girls, as we know. The other thing is also you can extract a student of foreign origin, and they feel in the lower secondary school they feel less included than in the primary school, and they feel less included in Italy than in other countries. So, in terms of well-being, Scuola Media, lower secondary school is not working. Then we started collecting a number of evidence on the teacher side. Age distribution, you can see the average age of teachers is basically the same as for lower secondary is 32 years old, which is almost the same as secondary, upper secondary, slightly higher. So, that's pretty normal in every country. Normally teachers in primary are younger than in lower secondary where it exists, and certainly upper secondary. So, in a sense, in that Italy is a bit, the fact there is no basic difference in terms of age is a bit the odd man out. We look data on teacher self-esteem and the perception of how they are regarded from public opinion at large. And again, data not particularly satisfactory. I mean, the self-esteem is very low and declining over time. And opinion on other teachers and their degree of training. And we have a number of data we look at the teachers. And finally, we try to look at achievement. We use teams. The technical reason is basically INVALSI data are not longitudinal scale. So you can say a lot about differences across regions, but you can't say whether there's been a cognitive progress or regress. No, it still is because it's not very big. So you can say if say Pennsylvania comes in the next year, but you cannot follow the same cohort over time.
You can.
Because you need the scales. We can discuss it if you want, because that's a big issue. But so now what you get from teams in math, but in science is even greater. minus 35, I think, that you actually get a decrease in achievement in math and science from 4th grade to 8th grade. Then, you know, there are other issues which are extremely important, like the gender gap tends to narrow, but that's largely because decline performance by boys is more pronounced, and there are, you know, increasing achievement gap between for primary when you move to lower secondary. That's something you can see also at the class. So, which basically leads us to conclude that we also did in the past work on observer panel, try to look at the impact of social economic origin on the result of the student achievement, whereas primary school you cannot detect a very strong impact of socio-economic background of achievement. During lower secondary school, you can see the effect of social background that would be increased and clearly to the advantage of those who are better off. So basically, our conclusion, which is I know is not shared by INVALSI, but our conclusion is the lower secondary school is still a weak link in our schooling system. So then, but you know, you see, in order to make, that's the methodology for point, in order to make this conclusion, we had to look at a number of different sources. Something you can't just simply say just by looking at INVALSI data. And then, you know, there are open questions which are really important to address. I mean, how can you redress the impact? Somebody suggests you can abolish the lower secondary school. If you remember, it was Berlinguer, the minister of education solution. How can you make the transition from primary school to community? How can you have to change rules in teacher training, especially for lower secondary school, introduce optional subjects and so on. Or, for instance, something I believe is teaching methodology in order to enhance the guidance towards the following choices, the track choices of the upper secondary school. So this is the sort of policy question can be raised by looking in order to find the answer. You have to wait for the report to be published. So basically, this is an example of things that you can basically extract from the data, provided you can look in sort of encompassing way. Final slide is basically, you know, which kind of data would be interesting to have. So this is really a wish list. Certainly, you know, value added has been finally implemented. There is an issue of longitudinal scale, though, if you want to establish cognitive progress there. Then it would be important to link student achievement and teacher characteristics from the anagraph professional. We know very little about teachers. We know obviously teachers are important. We know very, very little in this country about the way teachers work. We desperately need to bring in non-cognitive skills, and you know, there's been this silly argument by Roars on the, against testing non-cognitive skills, which is something that's done everywhere. We need systematic more of data collection on teaching methodology through possibly direct observation of teacher. Which certainly something would be ideal is to link INVALSI data with anagraph edilizia scolastica. That is census of school buildings. Italy, which is actually very good. I mean, to some surprise, we found out that the 2018 edition is has a coverage rate of about 90%. And clearly, as learning is changing very fast, as we know, we should move outside learning at school and so having, systematic and periodic assessment of learning, long life learning, I think is a very important thing to be done in this country. It's like here, not very regular.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea. We still have 15 minutes, and therefore I open the floor for discussion.
Just a little issue. I'm afraid I couldn't understand if the students about them you made the experiment in Trento were BES or special needs. You know surely that there is a big difference. Special needs, if you say special needs in general, you understand.
Yeah, no, okay. I understand the question. There were, the point is very right, in the sense in the school terminology, BES, special needs, is a sort of wider domain. We look at the, what in the OECD is categories A and B, which means basically 104 and the STA. Okay? So it's not Italian, it's the only way I can explain it.
I want to say that I disagree with one of your conclusions. I don't think that lower secondary school doesn't work. Because this is true if we consider the national score. But if we split it between north, center and south of Italy, we see that in the north, the lower secondary school works. And this is important. It is the grade where the gap between north and south becomes evident. So, according to me, it is not true that it doesn't work in general. It doesn't work in some areas of the country, but not in all.
And your argument is basically because it's written up in INVALSI for translation. Allora, Angela's point is, and it's written up exactly the same way in the INVALSI report of 2018. It's not true to say that the lower secondary school doesn't work in terms of, let's say, achievement, or if we want to take, because basically there are huge differences across the country. The decline in achievement, in the level of achievement I just shown you, is obviously much stronger in the south than in the north. I'm honest, when I read it, I was really honestly lost for words, in the sense that, if you look at the school system at the national level, even if it works fine, say in Trento province, but it doesn't work in the rest of the country, I tend to think it doesn't work. I mean, you want to look at national level. I mean, the fact it works in the north may be helpful, if you live in the north, but if you want to take a nationwide view of it, you have to look how it works in the north, in the center, and the south. And I think we both agree that the national average is actually declining. So at the end of the day, it doesn't work.
I work
in Turin, and I work in a school, Leonardo da Vinci, in a part of Turin where there are educational and social problems, but there is a school with a lot of tradition, and there is a very high quality of teachers keep. I think that the problem is very complex about the secondary school, low secondary school, and I noticed that we would like together work also in the primary and in the kindergarten, because the origins of difficulties of our students in the low secondary school are different origins. I have a vision only with this school, but before I worked in the educational office, provincial office for inclusion, so I have a vision of different schools in the Piedmont, not in Italy all. But I think that there is a strong link between the different grade of schools, order and different grade of schools. And in my school, for example, I noticed that we need to work with the training of teachers of primary and also kindergarten, because there is a strong link between this. And also we need to work with the families, because there is no habit, there is no culture of studying, and so we need to improve the culture of and the habit of studying, of the importance of culture. So the problem is more complex. It's true that the low secondary school works and there are good teachers, but we need more training. And I know the experiment in Trento, and I agree. And I try to introduce this idea also with all the teachers, with special needs teachers, and to work together to improve inclusion through differentiation, through didactics, different methodologies and so on. But it's necessary, we need to work about training teachers and policymakers, it's true. Thank you.
If we can actually gather another couple of questions, because then lunchtime is pressing. Exactly.
Okay, now on the special needs, that's very interesting, and probably most of you know that the special needs is, in terms of percentage of the student population, is particularly strong in the Scuola Media and the lower secondary. Now, on your first claim, basically saying, problems actually begin in the primary school. It's possible. Well, honestly, if I look at the evidence, that's typical problem I have when we talk with schools, because teachers tend to rely on their own direct experience. But if you look at the 100,000 a day, that doesn't seem to be the case, because in terms of, if you take a snapshot at the end of the primary school, in terms of achievement, Italian students are very good for all intents and purposes. In terms of the impact of the socio-economic region background, that doesn't seem to affect students' results and so on and so forth. So, in a sense, from an equity and effectiveness point of view, it seems to work fine. Once you move from end of primary to end of secondary, things change. So clearly, but that's looking, at the data, at the end. That's what I try to do. So it's maybe, well, possible, I don't know. Some of the problems, we know education is a cumulative process. So, things may have started in the primary, at the primary level, but if I look at the data, I must say that the problem is largely confined to secondary school.
One last round of questions. Okay, then I guess if there is no question.
Good morning. My name is Lorenzo Maraviglia and I work in statistical office of Provincia of Lucca, which is a local administration. And I was impressed by the fact that all policies that you mentioned, policies aimed at improving the students' outcome, are focused on school, as if the school is the problem and the solution to the problem. But yesterday we heard from Professor Vittadini that school heterogeneity accounts for about 1% of variation in students' outcomes, and which is a little bit too small, I think so. But other studies tell us that schools account for about 10%, 15% of variation in outcomes. The remaining variation is at students' level. It's something which deals with the heterogeneity of students. Okay, and it's been said that correlation is not causation, but correlation is a potential source of information. And correlation says that the strongest predictor of students' outcome is parents' education. So, shouldn't we think about investing in adult education in order to make school more effective? I say in order to make school more effective, because clearly, I don't know if it's a causal relationship, but there is a strong relationship which we should understand better, I think.
Okay, I agree with your conclusion. I totally disagree with your numbers or Georgia's numbers. I don't know. I wasn't here yesterday, unfortunately. We know that Italy is actually looking at the PISA. It's one of the countries within the OECD which has the widest between school variance component, meaning the basically difference within school, between school, sorry, different from within school, between students within school, are very high. I think I think it's the fourth with the largest between school component after Netherlands and within the OECD country. But anyway, it's very high. So there is a huge variety of school even within the same region, within the same tracks. The other thing, you rightly pointed out there is an impact on socioeconomic background, but look, what we know is that once you take away, we're talking about upper secondary in this case, the choice of track and regional effect, the impact of social background is very tiny. So basically, where does the social background kicks in? But largely because of the choice of the whether to go to the liceo, technical institute, or professional institute. That's a very, socially driven choice. Once you're there, students, say, of the lyceum tend to have a very close social composition. That's something there is plenty of evidence from INVALSI to begin with, from other sources. So I don't think the statistical point is very correct. What I think, you're right, obviously, society. Together with Giorgio, we did work some times ago. One of the things we noticed in a number of cities, for instance, there is very little link between the work we were looking at fight against dropout, the dispersion. Very little common work between third sector in the afternoon and school activities in the morning. So typically society, which is different from the European side, of which I agree, but even there, you know, things are done by no-profit organization, totally not linked with the work done by schools in the morning, which is a pity. In a sense, I tend, very often, one tend to see schools as being very sort of not open to external stimuli in a number of terms of points. Then obviously, I would like